Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. In today's video, I want to share with you some exciting plants that I find exciting that are starting to come to for spring. I'm going to be doing my March garden tour this weekend, Easter weekend, but I wanted to today go through some of the plants I'm probably not going to highlight during that garden tour. And so spring has happened, and it's March 26th. It's beautiful. It's sunny today, and it is only going to be in the low 70s. So right now it's in the 50s. It's just crisp and beautiful and just fun to be out in the garden. So I've got a few things I'd like to share with you today. And one of the very first is this bloom. This is my red tropical hibiscus. And I've got 3 tropical hibiscuses that I kept outside in their large pots, and I protected them during our freeze. So we got down to 19 degrees. But what I did is I covered them with frost cloth all the way down to the ground, and then put down bricks so the air wouldn't get underneath the frost cloth, and I covered it 4 times. And so what was interesting is they survived. They're very finicky. They do not like the cold, and they will die. But all of the stems are just healthy, and they're growing leaves, and I'm just super excited. And then of course I'm excited because this is my first hibiscus flower that's flowering from this group of 3 that I saved outside over the winter. So that's tropical hibiscus. Like I said, are finicky. This one I want to make a comment on because I couldn't figure out why it's having, a more difficult time with its leaves. This happens to be my yellow hibiscus with a red center. It's really pretty. I do see a bloom up there. But what I found this week was squirrels, and they were climbing the stems, and they were just stripping off the leaves, these baby leaves, and eating them. And I know that the squirrels eat hibiscus leaves because I've seen them do it. And they also ate my hibiscus flowers when I had the double peach. They're really annoying. But that was the cause of my hibiscus here to have to keep regenerating its leaves. And then on this end, I have my pink hibiscus golly that I've had for 4 years now, and I've saved through 2 freezes. One was really bad, and I didn't think that it was going to survive, but one stem did, and so it's been a really pretty performer for me every summer, so I've wanted to keep it. All right, the next thing I want to share with you is something that's new for me this year. I have not grown canna lilies in my yard before, and I was super intrigued with them when I visited my mother last year, and she got a beautiful planter that had a canna in it, and it was just absolutely stunning. And so I thought, I kind of want to add that to my garden. And so what I did is I bought bulbs, which was also a first for me. Let me get a little closer. At Costco, I purchased this bag of 7 canna bulbs. The color is, they're called, the name of it is the President, and they are a red canna, which is a pollinator attractor. And I thought, what, in this pot I had a gorgeous red Mandevilla, or Mandevilla, as many people pronounce it, and it died in the winter. Mandevillas are so not tolerant of any type of cold, and I have tried to cover and over winter, and if I take them in the garage, they survive. But I couldn't because it was too large. And so I love Mandevilla, but I thought, you know what? I am going to try Canas. So I planted Canas in this pot, and they are starting to come up, which is so exciting for me because this is a first. I have a very narrow raised bed, and it is right next to, this is the back side of my 5-panel trellis where we plant Cardinal Climber. And as you can see, the Cardinal Climber we've planted, and it's coming up. Pretty exciting. There's its first set of true leaves that are just starting to come. But on the back side, I have a very narrow planter. And my father made this planter and these 2 octagons for me years ago. Oh, it's got to be at least 20 plus years ago. And I planted these Canas in here in ground also because I've struggled with what do I want here. And they're starting to come up. So I've got Canas that are going to be coming up throughout here, and they're coming up. So I'm super excited. On this end, I've had a lily, beautiful lily that comes back every year, and it keeps growing and getting more branches. I'm probably going to have to divide that. And so I was going to put a lily on this end, but it died last year in our horrendous heat. And so right now I've got Canas, but we'll see. So we'll see what that does. This plant I asked last year, does anybody know what this is? And we've had this in the ground 4 years now, and this is the absolute first year that it is blooming. We planted seeds all in through this bed, and the seeds we planted were 2 packages. One was a wildflower mix, and the other one was just a general flower mix. And a few things came up. Mainly it was ugly celosia, but this is with us constantly, but it never bloomed. And the doves like to come in here and lay in it. Don't ask me why, but they absolutely love this plant out of all the plants in our yard. And look, that is just starting to bloom. Is that some form of dianthus? I don't know. Because I don't buy dianthus. It's not, for me, it's not a great pollinator attractor. So, but I do keep it here just because of that original planting of seeds. And also the doves, for some reason, love this plant. Okay, on to the next thing I'd like to share with you. So I have a raised bed, and this is 4 feet by 4 feet that I created specifically for this plant. And I've talked about this plant before. This is the blue chiffon rose of Sharon. It has the most spectacular blue flower. I loved this plant. The funny story, and I've told this and shared this before, is when I ordered it from Proven Winners, this will be its 4th summer now in the ground. It was the absolute tiniest plant I think you could send. And it did go through the stages of first year it slept, second year it crept, third year it leapt. It did do some growing, and so now it does look like a small shrub. This is supposed to grow to 8 to 12 feet tall. So I fully expect it to grow above, to grow taller than our fence and just have a gorgeous display of these blue, wonderful hibiscus flowers. It's taken a while to get there. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have certainly not ordered a tiny little minuscule plant online. I would have tried to have gotten that plant via a local nursery. Somehow asked them to get one ordered, to get one in. I wanted that plant. I'm glad that I have it. It's just taken a very long time to get there. So I do have a John Fanick phlox in front of it that I absolutely love. But the thing I wanted to show you is what I have back here. So last summer I planted Tithonia, and I started them from seed indoors, and I made the mistake of putting them in my trellis bed, and they grew stunningly, beautifully, tall, and were gorgeous. But they seeded over here, and I had, I don't know, 4 maybe Tithonia plants in the late fall that bloomed, and so the butterflies that were migrating, the monarchs that were migrating down enjoyed them, and it was wonderful to have Tithonia in this bed that had self-seeded. Well, lo and behold, they came up in the spring. So instead of starting my plants inside, what I did is I dug up this Tithonia that was in this garden bed, and I planted them in these little pots because I have a new garden bed that I'm wanting to create this spring, early summer in full sun, and I want Tithonia in there. So I thought this was perfect. These were self-seeded. They came up. They never really missed a beat, which was interesting to me. This one I thought was maybe not going to make it. It was a little bit droopy. But I dug them up with as many of the roots as I could, and they just look really, really nice. So I'm really happy to have this stand of Tithonia, and I didn't have to start it from seed indoors, which even made me more excited because I'm not really good with seeds indoors. Okay, on to the next thing I'd like to share. I purchased a couple new plants at my favorite nursery, and these are replacements. This is Liatris, or Blazing Star, and the particular type is called Kobold. This particular plant was such a magnet, and I had planted it in what I call my tree bed. It did not survive in full sun during our extreme drought and heat that we had last summer. So all 3 of them, I lost all of them. And so I did want to get these replacements, and I will be putting these in my new garden bed also. I just think they're such a nice plant to have, and I love the fact that it's a native and how much of an attractor it is to pollinators. You know, life always finds a way, and this tickles me, and so I have not pulled them out of my pot. I have a beautiful Pride of Barbados, and this is a summer, midsummer to late summer, beautiful flower, and it is putting on new growth, and I'm absolutely excited to see it. But over a year ago, I had some snapdragons self-seed in this pot, and they are blooming this early spring, and I can see there's lots of buds. And I cut this down all the way to the ground, or to the soil level in this pot last summer, because I didn't want them in there, and I thought that was going to be that, and it wasn't that. And they are back this spring, and they are going to bring a pop of color anyway. I'm not going to pull them out. I probably will cut them down to the ground again and see what happens. But isn't that the way plants are sometimes? You know, some are so hardy that, you know, snapdragons are not invasive by any means, but it certainly was telling me that it was going to continue And my husband came out this morning and said, boy, I really like the color of that snapdragon. It's so pretty, and you can really notice it in the yard. So life does find a way. The other thing I'd like to share with you is my shade bed is going to be opened up for a little bit more morning sun, because we just removed a volunteer tree from this spot this week. That tree was up over the fence, and we actually thought it was part of the bushes that were in here. It kind of provided some really dense shade, but then finding out that it was a volunteer tree, and that tree is this tree. And so we have a 2-story home, and the last thing we wanted was a tree by the fence that gets to be massive like this. Quite a bit of effort, but we did remove it from the roots. And so we'll be putting down leaves and mulch back here. And it opened up a spot where it's like, ooh, I can put more back in there now. So I'm excited for that. I've got opened up a little bit more real estate for my shade garden. So pretty darn excited about that. The last thing I wanted to share with you is about my porterweed. I've got multiple colors of porterweed in the garden, and so far all of them I have planted in planters. I think I am going to plant 1 or 2 in the ground, because sometimes they can come back. The reason I have them in planters is because I do try to save most of them and in the winter time. And so the thing I wanted to share with you on my porterweed that I did save is I cut them back pretty severely. And you'll notice they get to have kind of a woody stem to them. And I didn't know how this was going to go. I didn't know if it was going to respond or if it was going to say, no, I'm done. And it has responded well. So it is starting to sprout back new leaves. And it's going to be interesting to me to see if it will bloom beautifully or if it's going to be stunted and it's not going to do well. So I will keep you informed of what my porterweed does, because this is a huge workhorse in the garden. Pollinators absolutely love this flower. My purple porterweed was here. It died. It did not survive the freeze, and it was taller than my 6-foot fence. And so I did replace it this spring. And this is what the porterweed blooms look like. And I've mentioned this on my channel before. The bloom spikes are long, but they only bloom in a small segment along the bloom spike each day. The beautiful thing and the reason that pollinators are so attracted to the flower is because it refills with nectar all throughout the day. So I will have pollinators on this flower on all the different porterweeds that I have. And let me show the red one. All throughout the day, all day long. And so it's certainly an interesting flower with these bloom spikes that get wavy, and they wave in the breeze, if you will. It's unique, but it is a pollinator magnet. So I'm doing a little bit of experimenting with porterweed. I've got many different types of porterweed, many different colors, and so I'm learning as I go. And this is the first year that I cut it back pretty severely I cut 2 of them back pretty heavily, and I'm going to be cutting a 3rd back. Well, I'm excited to show you my garden tour that's coming up this weekend. But thank you for joining me today as I talked about some of the things that probably aren't going to be on the garden tour. So I hope you all have a wonderful day today, and I hope to see you again soon.